Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So we are done with classification, regression, which are all supervised learning approaches. What we'll be looking at today is something called unsupervised learning, which involves two different techniques called clustering and dimensional reduction. Okay. So this is your supervised learning where you have different labels. Here the labels are crosses and circles. And you essentially draw a line between these two. If a new data point comes above this line, it's a cross. If it comes below the line, it's a circle. But in the case of unsupervised learning, you don't have labels such as cross or circles. Okay? You only have points. What you want to do is sort of separate without knowing these labels. Here you can separate it because these points are here far apart from these points. So these are your two clusters that you have. Points within the same cluster are more likely to be from the same class. Like points from this cluster are more likely to be circle. Points from this cluster are more likely to be a cross. I mean, you don't know if it's circle or cross, but you know that these two are different. Suppose a point comes here, okay? You can see that a point comes here. Will it be assigned to this cluster or this cluster? Based on your KNN knowledge, you can say a point is here. Okay. Will it be assigned to the below cluster or the above cluster?
So below cluster.
Why?
So because it's near the below cluster cluster.
Yes. So that's how it should be done. Okay, correct. And so essentially what clustering is this one dividing the data points into different number of groups. Okay. Where in the same group, points will be more similar to each other. If you look at applications, it's used in market segmentation analysis, social network analysis, like recommending certain products to customers, and so on, so on, so on. Okay, there are many applications. These are some of it. First, the approach for clustering is okay. So initially, each point will be a cluster, and you can keep accumulating them. Maybe I'll show it later in the coming slides. Initially, each point will be a cluster. Then you keep combining 2 points into the same cluster. Okay. And so there are different types of clustering models that you have. One is the centroid model distribution. This is k-means clustering, which we'll be looking at it. There are distribution-based models based on probability distribution. Then there are density-based models. Okay. Mostly we'll be focusing on k-means clustering because the other two are slightly more complicated. But maybe in the tutorial, I can show how to do all these three different types of clusterings. Okay. Looking at k-means clustering, the implementation is each point is a cluster. Start joining two points into the same cluster. Okay. Essentially, the distance between data points should be the Euclidean distance. Okay. That you all calculated for the k nearest neighbors case. It's somewhat similar. Okay. This is how it's done. Initially, you have points such as these. Now, randomly assign some point as centroid. Like randomly assign this as red cross, this as blue cross. Okay. Now, what you do is for each point in this diagram, calculate the distance with respect to red and blue. Okay. If the distance with the red color is lower than the distance with the blue color, okay, it will be assigned to the red cluster, as you can see here. These points are all closer to red than blue. So it's assigned as red. Now, once you have this initially, you calculate something called the centroid, essentially the midpoint of this cluster. Okay. That you can do by just averaging out the x and y coordinates of all the points in that cluster. Now the centroid moves here. Okay, both the centroids. Now again you recalculate. Okay. When you recalculate, it's like this. Now again move the centroid. Okay, it's here. Blue will be here. Then recalculate. Then it's like this. Then you calculate centroid. Okay. Then again when you recalculate, the clusters won't change. Okay. So you have to keep repeating this process until the points in clusters don't move. It remains in the same cluster. Okay. This is how you do k-means clustering. Some problems with k-means clustering, it is essentially looking at the local geometry. Okay. It doesn't know because as you can see, it can be three clusters based on three. K is equal to 3. If k is 5, you'd assign 5 different clusters. Here it can divide it into 5 different clusters. Okay. So, and local optima meaning it can be like this or it can just be like this. Okay. It can change based on the location of the initial centroid. So these are some problems that you have. But if you know some values beforehand, like, okay, I only have two classes. Before doing this t-shirt sizing clustering, what you can think is, okay, I want the model to be separating the data set into three different sizes. I only want small, medium, large. If you know that before, then it's fine. Or you want extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, that you have to decide beforehand. Okay. Again, K is essentially a hyperparameter, very similar to K nearest neighbors. Any doubts? Any doubts in K-means clustering?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving on. Again, how to select K? What did we do did we have a similar curve in K nearest neighbors during the tutorial? We had somewhat similar curve, right? Here you had accuracy or like misclassification error. Here you have number of clusters, that is K. So how do you select K? That is an important question that you have to answer. How do you do it is based on something called the elbow method. Like, okay, as you keep increasing the number of clusters, the sum of square distance keeps decreasing. But as you keep increasing the number of clusters, you also have to do more and more computations. Okay, that's not very efficient. So you need to sort of find a trade-off. You can't keep one because it's very high. You can keep two or three. Either of these should be fine. It has lower uh, sum of square distance and it's not the number of k is also not too high. So essentially you have to look at this point and choose a k that's good enough. Okay, it shouldn't be too large and it should also have less sum of square distance of these elements. And okay, this is how you do clustering. This is mostly I've been focused on centroid based models. Okay. And we'll also be looking at how to implement these and other clustering approaches in the tutorial. Okay. Any doubts? No. Moving on to something called dimensionality reduction. Okay. Can anyone tell me what's the difference between multivariate data analysis and univariate data analysis? Like based on what do you decide, okay, this is multivariate and something is univariate? Based on what?
So focusing one variable at a time, that is univariate.
Or yeah,
Processing one variable.
yeah. So essentially, if you focus on just one feature, okay, that is a univariate. If you want to focus on all the features at once, it's multivariate. So this is a multivariate data analysis scenario. You have four different features. This is taken from something called the iris data set. Typically, all if someone wants to learn machine learning, they start with this data set. So the uh, target here is to classify uh, flower based on its sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width. Okay, you have three different species: Iris setosa, versicolor, and virginica. Okay, these are three different plants, as you can see. Okay, based on the sepal length and width and length, petal width and length, you have to see, okay, which species does this flower belong to? That's the idea here. But in order to do that, can you visualize all these four features together? Can we visualize something in 4 dimensions? What's the maximum number of dimensions that you can use to sort of like visualize the data? How many dimensions can you visualize?
Sir, it's based on the data set
Hmm.
only.
Hmm?
It's based on the data features.
Sorry?
Sir,
No,
it's
I'm asking
based on.
in the general world, how many dimensions you can see?
Sir, there are indefinite,
Mhm. You,
infinite number of
maximum, maximum you can only see three-dimensional objects, right? Yeah,
X, Y, Z. Yes, sir.
you can't go beyond 3 dimension, right?
Yes, sir.
To see whatever you can't even imagine how the data will look like in 4 dimensions and so on. Yeah. So we can't visualize all these 4 dimensions together. Okay. So what you can do is do it two at a time, like this one. Okay. Do two at a time, like sepal length and sepal width. I'll plot together and see how it's separated. Okay. You can either do two at a time, or you can reduce the dimensionality to 2 or 3 dimensions, like this one. This is 2D, this is 3D, by combining all these four features. And that is what essentially principal component analysis means. That we'll be looking at in the coming slides. Okay. So you can plot it pairwise based on these plots. Which pair of features do you think can separate all these three species properly? Basically, if you see three different clusters, that means those two features are really good at separating. Okay. Based on this figure, can you tell me what it is? What are the two features? As you can see, petal length is able to separate it properly, and its petal length and sepal width can separate it properly but sepal width and sepal length, no, because there is a lot of points here and there. If you these two are good, these two are good. This is really good. Petal length and petal width can separate the species properly. So this is how you decide. But if there are more number of features, obviously you can't do everything parallels and check. Okay, that's why you need principal component analysis. The main purpose of principal component analysis is to find patterns and reduce the dimension. Like I want to reduce from 4 to 3 or 2. Okay. And okay, you project a feature space to a small subspace and hope that it represents the data very well. But if you go from 4D to 3D, you might essentially lose information. You don't want that to happen. A minimal loss is fine. You don't want to lose much information. Okay. Maybe in the 4 dimension, it's able to separate well. It should also be the case that in the 3 dimension or 2 dimension, when you reduce the number of features, it should also be able to separate the classes well. Okay. So this is the overall approach. You take the whole data set without labels because this is an unsupervised learning approach. You calculate the mean, covariance matrix, get the eigenvector eigenvalues, sort the eigenvectors according to eigenvalues, and transform it to newer subspace. This we'll see. Okay, you don't have to do everything by hand in Python because Python scikit-learn already has a convenient class for us to do all these. But I'll walk you through how to do PCA. Okay, you start with some synthetic random data set like this. Okay, it has 40 samples, 3 features, and number of labels is 2, class 1 and class 2. Essentially, if I want to separate, I can draw a plane like this. Okay, I can put a square sort of thing. I can separate these two. Okay. Again, as I told you, multivariate, only up to 3 dimensions we can visualize. Okay, we only have 3 features, so we are able to visualize it properly. But I want to visualize this in 2D also. See, I want to see how it is. So the goal of doing PCA here is to drop one dimension. Okay, I need to drop one and visualize this data set in 2D. So how many dimensions we have in the data set? How many dimensions we have? What is it? How many dimensions do we have?
So 2, 3, sir.
It's 3 because we have 3 features. The goal is to come to 2 dimension. Okay. So what you do first, you start with the mean. For each feature, you calculate the mean, just taking the average across column. Okay, you start with that. Then you calculate something called the covariance matrix. Okay. You don't need to understand this in detail. I'll just show okay, how it is. You know mean and standard deviation, right? That you must have learned. Like if the standard deviation is more, there is a lot of variance, as you can see in this curve. If it's less, the curve will be like this. The spread will be lower for lower standard deviations. Okay. But this is for one variable. If you want to do it across 2 or 3 or 4 variables, you have to calculate something called the covariance. If your data is like this, there is not much spread along x-axis. So x will have lower variance. If your data is like this, it's not spread across y-axis, so lower variance for y. This is the single variable case. If your data is like this, you have positive covariance. If it's like this, the line goes like this, so we have negative covariance. And if there is like no pattern, you have zero covariance. Okay? This is how data should be like in 2D. Okay? Again, you can't imagine it beyond 3 dimensions, but this is how you can imagine your data to be like. in 2 dimensions. Okay. Once that is done, you have to get your eigenvalues and eigenvectors. Okay. This is a little bit of linear algebra. I think Rutraj must have touched upon it, but I'll explain anyway. So you have two eigenvalues and eigenvectors for 2 dimensions. Okay. As you can see, this is your first eigenvector with the eigenvalue as 1. And here it's the second one, it's 7, because it's spread out more in this direction than this direction. So it's the magnitude of spread. Same case for all the other data set. If your spread is more in that direction, that eigenvalue will be higher than the other eigenvalues. Okay. And these are your eigenvectors. Okay. This one, this one, this one. 1 0 0 1, 1 0 0 1, and so on. Okay. Again, no need to go into more details because scikit-learn will do all these for you. Okay. Any doubts till now? Any doubts?
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, PC always drop 1 dimension, sir.
No, that you can decide how many to drop.
Okay, sir.
That is again a hyperparameter that you have to tune. But if you keep dropping more and more, you will lose a lot of information. Okay, that you don't want to lose. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Any other doubts?
No, sir.
Okay, moving on. This is matrix factorization. I mean, how it works is, again, covariance matrix. How do you decompose? It's called singular value decomposition. You don't need to do all this, okay? But just to put it here, it's you decompose a single matrix into 3 different matrices. Okay, UDD. That D is the diagonal matrix. Diagonal matrix meaning except the diagonal, all the entries of the matrix will be 0. Those that will contain the square roots of eigenvalues. Okay. So this is how essentially PCA works. You have a table containing features across data points. You calculate the mean, like column wise, get the covariance matrix. Okay. Do some eigenvalue stuff, sort it based on the eigenvalues, and pick. You pick V1, V2 to be your features. If you want 2 features, take the top 2 eigenvectors. If you want 3 features, take the top 3 eigenvectors. This is how PCA works. And these eigenvectors will have information from all the 5 features. Okay. Any doubts? And as you can see, there is no Y involved, there is no label involved. Okay. Okay. Moving on. You see, I did PCA on that data set. I transformed it from 3 dimension to 2 dimension. And it's good. Not much information has been lost. It's, as you can see, there are points here, there are points here. There are some overlapping points, but here also you can see this overlapping. So it has essentially preserved most of the information. Okay? Not 100%, most of the information with minimal information loss. This is how PCA works. Again, you can convert a 5D object to 2D object to 3D object. It can be anything. The dimensions of these two, that you have to decide. Okay. So to summarize PCA, if you have a very large data table and you want to visualize or you can't work on like 1,000 different features. You don't have that much computation. You can use PCA to reduce the number of features that you want to work on, and it can be more easily visualized and analyzed. And you can select the top K components. Okay, as I told you, it's not only 2 or 3 that you can fix. Okay, for visualization, it's 2 or 3. Okay, but for any other downstream tasks that you want to use the features, it can be more than 2 or 3 that you have to decide. But if you keep dropping more and more features, you lose more information. Okay, this is PCA. Any doubts?
Sir, I have one doubt.
Yes.
So if the dimensionality reduction in PCA will reduce the features, the important feature will miss, then how the data will clearly predict the output, sir?
So PCA will not miss important features. Okay, that you have to keep in mind. It will
Okay, sir.
it will have the information from important features. It will discard information from the unimportant features. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Any doubt? Any other doubts? Okay. Moving on to partial least limits. So PLS is another dimensionality reduction approach, but here you also have labels. Okay, so this is like supervised dimensionality reduction. We are moving a bit away from unsupervised learning, but why do we need that? Because PCA only explains variation in the data. Okay, but as you can see here, if you also like without any information, if you just do PCA, it will just retain the structure as such. Okay, but what you also want is good separation based on labels. If you also supply the labels along with the features in partial least squares, you get good separation like group 1 and group 2. Because PCA will only look at the data, it won't look at labels. Okay. And so once this is what I won't be going into details about the technique of behind PLS. You have to remember it's a supervised dimensional reduction technique where you also consider the label information. That's all you want to know. And here again, you can do a correlation plot where you can check which are important features and which are the features that sort of are retained. So these percentage values you see here, right? Like 41.2, 18.4. This means, okay, if I just keep one feature after PLS, I can only get 41.2% of the information. Okay, it's not good. I'm losing a lot of information. If I just have dimension 2 alone, okay, it's 18.4%, and that's not good enough. Okay, so if I have dimension 1 and dimension 2 together after reducing the dimension, total I have like 60 point, it's 59.6% or something. I can also add another dimension, like while doing PLS, I can sort of reduce it to 3 dimension. Then it will increase from 59 to maybe 70. Okay. So as you can see, if you keep reducing the number of dimension again and again, you lose information. A good rule to remember is sort of at least 90% of your information should be retained. Okay? And that 90% you might get in this data to be like around 4 or 5 dimensions. Okay. So out of 20 different features, I can, if I reduce it to 5 dimensions, I can still retain 90% of the information from the data. That's how you should remember. And you should, if you keep two, you have to sum, like add these two. That is what is called explained variance. And these are different features like from some random data set. So long jump is contributing more to dimension 2 than dimension 1. And I mean, so these are all important features. The longer the arrow is, more important that feature is for this dimension or this dimension. That's what you have to remember, okay? Any doubts in this plot? Longer the arrow is, more important is that feature. That's what you have to remember.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then again, you have something called a biplot and VIP scores. Biplot is essentially like different clusters that you have. Okay. After reducing the dimensionality, you check how many clusters are there based on the labels. VIP scores will essentially give you what are the important features. Okay. These things we'll learn how to plot in our own data set in the coming tutorial. Okay. And to summarize what we have for PLS is it's a supervised dimensional detection method. It sort of combine features from PCA and I mean, it will do a multiple regression sort of thing. It has the highest predictive power. When you have labels, it's always better to do PLS than PCA because it will give you the most predictive features. Not only it will explain the variation in data, it will retrieve the most important or predictive features. That's what PLS is. Any doubts? Okay. I think I'm done for today. So there are no other doubts. We can end the session for today. Tomorrow we'll be looking at the tutorial. Yeah. Any doubts? Or any of the previous classes? Yesterday I asked you all to do some assignment sort of thing, right? Anyone got the answer? Like, can anyone tell me their accuracy and best set of hyperparameters for random forest or decision tree? Anyone completed or if is anyone not able to do, I can sort of tell you what to do.
Sir, I just changed the max depth as 7. I got the accuracy as 9.7, sir.
97% you need.
Decision tree, sir.
Like, did you do hyperparameter tuning?
No, sir.
Okay, grid search CV. Okay, then you all do it today at least for
Okay, sir.
both random forest and decision tree, and let me know what's the accuracy. You have to run grid search CV. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Any other doubts? Okay, then if there are no more doubts, we can end the session. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.